April 2026, on the Gulf of Oman. A 900-foot Iranian container ship is racing toward home, refusing every single command to stop. For nearly 6 hours, the United States Navy issues warning after warning over the radio. 6 hours of complete silence in return. Then everything changes. A guided missile destroyer locks its 5-inch naval gun on the target, and 3 rounds tear straight into the engine room. Within minutes, U.S. Marines are fast roping out of the night sky onto a stack of shipping containers. Today, we are going to see exactly how America boarded and seized a foreign vessel on the high seas. To understand how this confrontation actually played out, we need to start with the players. On one side, the USS Bruins, a guided missile destroyer bristling with radar missiles and a 127mm naval cannon mounted on her bow. On board, ready to move at the captain's command, is an elite boarding team pulled from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, one of the most experienced rapid response forces in the entire United States military. On the other side, their target, the Tuska. This isn't some small smuggling vessel hugging the coast. This is a Panamax-class container ship 900 feet long, capable of carrying up to 5,000 shipping containers in a single voyage. She flies the Iranian flag, and her route tells you everything you need to know. She left the port of Zhuhai in southern China days earlier, loaded down with cargo, and she's pointing straight at Bandar Abbas on Iran's southern coast. The problem is that Washington has just rolled out something massive, a complete naval blockade of Iranian exports and the supply lines that feed them. Every ship moving in or out of Iranian waters is now a potential target. The Tuska is steaming directly into that net, and she has no intention of slowing down. To the captain, the math probably looks simple. He's flying a foreign flag in international waters, his cargo holds are full, and a port full of friendly forces is sitting just over the horizon. To the Pentagon, the math looks completely different. A blockade only works if it's enforced, and the first ship to break through unchallenged sets the precedent for every other ship behind it. So how exactly does the U.S. Navy stop a vessel this size without sending it to the bottom of the ocean? The answer starts with patience. The interception takes place far out in international waters, roughly 340 miles east of the Strait of Hormuz, deep in the Gulf of Oman. The Tuska is pushing forward at 17 knots, a determined pace, clearly trying to punch through the blockade line and reach the safety of Iranian waters before anyone can lay a hand on her. But the Bruins doesn't open fire. Not yet. U.S. Central Command operates by a strict playbook in moments like this, and that playbook starts with words, not weapons. What follows is a textbook escalation of warnings designed to give the merchant crew every possible chance to stand down before the situation turns lethal. Over the radio, the message is unmistakable. Motor vessel Tuska, vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We are prepared to subject you to disabling fire. The same call goes out again and again. For nearly 6 straight hours, the Navy hails this ship over open channels, ordering the captain to cut his engines and turn the vessel around. The crew hears every single transmission. They simply ignore them. The bow stays pointed at Iran, the engines stay at full power, and the radio stays silent. That decision, the decision to keep going, is the moment everything escalates from a diplomatic problem into a kinetic military operation. When the final warning ends, a horn blasts across the water from the deck of the Bruins. It's the kind of sound nobody on a merchant vessel ever wants to hear. Up on the bow, the destroyer's main weapon swings into position. This is the Mark 45, a 5-inch automated naval gun, and right now its barrel is pointed directly at the engine room of the Tuska. The first shot fires, then a second, then a third. 3 explosive rounds slam into the lower hull of the container ship in rapid succession, punching through steel and detonating deep inside the machinery space. The result is exactly what was intended. The Tuska's propulsion is destroyed in a single moment. The engines die. The shaft stops turning. A 900-foot vessel that was charging through the water at 17 knots is suddenly drifting helplessly, dead in the water. This is what makes the operation so impressive. The Bruins didn't sink the Tuska. The Navy didn't want to sink her. The whole point was a surgical strike that would kill the ship's mobility while leaving the main hull, the cargo holds, and the crew compartments completely intact. Sinking a vessel loaded with thousands of containers in international waters would be an environmental nightmare and a diplomatic disaster. So the gunners aimed precisely where they needed to, and only where they needed to. But 3 rounds in a matter of seconds raises an obvious question. How does a single naval gun fire that quickly, that accurately, and that consistently? The answer is hidden below the deck. The Mark 45 looks deceptively simple from the outside, just a sleek turret with a long barrel poking out the front. But the real machinery sits underneath, buried inside the ship, and it's a marvel of automated engineering. The system breaks down into 4 main components stacked from the magazine all the way up to the gun shield itself. At the very bottom is the automated ammunition shuttle. This is the conveyor that pulls fresh shells out of the magazine and starts moving them upward. Just above it sits the ammunition handling system, which receives those shells and prepares them for loading. Higher still, you'll find the 20-round loader drum, a rotating carousel that holds shells in firing order. And capping the whole assembly is the gun shield, the armored housing that protects the breech and the crew on deck. When the captain calls for fire, the entire chain comes alive in seconds. The ammunition shuttle delivers a shell to the lower hoist. The hoist lifts it up to the loader drum. From there, a tray carrying both the shell and its propellant rotates 90 degrees and rams the round into the breech. The gun fires, the round leaves the barrel, and a shell case ejector immediately spits the spent casing out of a side port to clear the way for the next one. The whole cycle repeats so quickly that the Mark 45 can sustain a rate of fire between 10 and 16 rounds every single minute. Each round is a full 127 millimeters across, packing more than enough energy to chew through the engine room of a container ship. And that gun isn't just a short-range weapon either. The Mark 45 can reach out to roughly 24 kilometers, or about 14 miles, putting an enemy target deep over the horizon. With the Tuska disabled and drifting, it's time for the second phase of the operation. This is where the Marines finally take center stage. The Bruins hands off the next move to a different ship entirely, the USS Tripoli, an amphibious assault ship designed for exactly this kind of mission, moves into position nearby. From her flight deck, 2 MH-60 Seahawks lift off into the dark sky. The Seahawk is the Navy's maritime variant of the famous Black Hawk helicopter, and it's carrying members of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. The footage of what happens next was captured on night vision, painted in that distinctive green glow. The lead Seahawk approaches the Tuska low and fast, then suddenly slows to a perfect hover directly above a stack of shipping containers piled high on the deck. Marines stack up at the open door. One by one, they grab the rope and slide down into the darkness, landing on top of the steel containers below. While the boarding team is exposed on the rope, they would be sitting ducks for anyone hostile on the deck. So the second Seahawk doesn't land. It stays in the air, circling slowly above the ship at a higher altitude, weapons hot and watching every angle. This is what's called armed overwatch, and it gives the boarding Marines a constant umbrella of protection while they get their boots on the deck. Once they're down, the Marines move with practiced precision. They sweep through the containers, clear the walkways, and push toward the bridge. They confront the captain, take control of the helm, and shut down any remaining systems on the vessel. The crew was detained and held in a controlled space while specialist teams began documenting the cargo. Every container marking, every shipping manifest, every piece of paperwork on board now becomes evidence in a much larger intelligence picture. Within minutes, a 900-foot Iranian flagged container ship that was steaming defiantly toward home is now a captured prize floating in the Gulf of Oman. But none of this would even be possible if the Bruins couldn't survive in hostile waters herself. The Mark 45 is great at 14 miles, but what about a threat much further out? say a hostile aircraft or another warship at 50 miles or more. For that, the Bruins reaches into the cells hidden flush with her deck. These are the vertical launch systems, or VLS. Each launcher tube is roughly 25 feet deep, and standing next to one gives you a real sense of the scale. When a missile fires from a VLS cell, the entire process happens straight up. The cell door slides open, the missile ignites, and exhaust gases are vented through a separate channel built into the side of the launcher. This setup is called a hot launch, and it lets the missile clear the deck on its own engines without needing any external boost. That's the long-range punch. But what happens when a threat slips past the missiles and gets close to the ship? That's where the second layer kicks in, the phalanx close and weapon system. Mounted on top is a Ku-band search radar with a separate tracking radar just below it. At the bottom is the real workhorse, a 20mm Gatling gun fed from a continuous belt of ammunition that can pour out around 4,500 rounds every minute, building a wall of metal in front of any incoming threat. If a small drone or low-flying missile somehow survives even that, the Bruins has a third layer waiting. The CRAM system carries an 11-cell launcher loaded with RIM-116 rolling airframe missiles, infrared homing weapons designed specifically to chase down sea-skimming threats. CRAM can engage anything within roughly 6 miles and hits its target around 90% of the time. 3 overlapping layers, all working together, all designed to make sure the destroyer goes home. So why did all of this happen in the first place? The Tuska wasn't pulled over for a random inspection. She was caught in the middle of one of the largest geopolitical squeezes in modern naval history. Washington has thrown a complete blockade around Iranian oil exports, the cargo movements that feed them, and the underground network keeping them alive. That network has a name. It's called the Shadow Fleet, a loose collection of aging tankers and freighters, many of them more than a decade old, that quietly haul Iranian oil and goods to buyers around the world while bypassing every international sanction on the books. China is deeply involved in protecting this fleet, and that complicates things in a serious way. When American warships move on a vessel that Beijing has unofficially placed under its umbrella, every action carries the risk of triggering a much wider naval confrontation. The Tuska was a relatively clean target because she was a container ship in clear violation of the blockade. The next operation may not be that simple. Future intercepts could involve oil tankers being chased thousands of miles across the open Pacific, ships repainted and renamed mid-voyage to disguise their identity, and Chinese warships shadowing American forces the entire way. Some of those tankers may even have submarines escorting them quietly under the surface, which is exactly the kind of nightmare that keeps fleet commanders awake at night. What you just watched might only be the opening chapter of a much longer story playing out across the world's most contested waterways. If this breakdown helped you understand what really happened in the Gulf of Oman, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the operations shaping the modern world. Drop a comment below telling us what you want next, whether it's another naval intercept, a closer look at the Marines, or the next move in this growing standoff.